NBC News World Headquarters in New York. This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. We know a lot more tonight about what was happening inside the cockpit of that doomed Continental Connection commuter plane moments before it fell from the sky near Buffalo Thursday night. The flight recorders show the crew got an ominous warning. Their Dash 8 turboprop was about to stall even as they discussed a buildup of ice on the wings. And late today, NTSB investigators on the scene also revealed the plane did not dive to the ground as first thought, but instead may have fallen flat onto the house below. We're covering the latest on the investigation and the awful human toll. NBC's Tom Costello starts us off from Amherst, New York, with late new details. Tom, good evening.
Hi, Lester. We now know this plane had very sophisticated de-icing equipment on board, but did the crew turn it on in time? The NTSB also said this evening that, in fact, both engines appear to have been operating normally, but something caused this plane, it appears, to stall and fall from the sky. From the Sheriff's Department, an aerial view of the wreckage of Flight 3407 and the home it destroyed. As recovery teams work to remove the remains of the victims, investigators have been sifting through the rubble looking for clues into what caused the crash. But ice remains a high probability. As Flight 3407 was coming into land, the crew discussed significant ice on the wings and windshield. Seconds after the pilots set the flaps to slow the speed for landing, the plane went into a violent pitch, then did a 180 turn and landed flat on the house below. The pilot never got the flaps fully extended to 15 degrees.
They got to flaps 10. So it means that something was happening as the flaps were coming down, and they didn't actually get the flap handle to 15.
We also learned the plane's stall warning systems were activated. If it did stall, was it caused by the ice on the wings or tail? Veteran pilots say ice is a deadly threat here.
Icing goes with the territory. Icing is something that we all encounter throughout the winter months here, everywhere else.
Bob Miller runs his own flight school in Buffalo, and like the Dash 8 that crashed, this plane also has pneumatic boots on the tail and wings that inflate to help break up any ice.
As air pulses into the boot, it causes it to pulse just like a heartbeat. And as air moving over the wing hits the cracking of the ice, it blows the ice off of the wing altogether.
The NTSB says the boots were on, but we don't know when they were turned on, and that's critical. The FAA has called for inflating the boots once ice has accumulated. But after icing brought down a commuter plane in Indiana, killing 68 people in 1994, the NTSB recommended that pilots inflate the boots more often to keep ice from ever forming.
Even a quarter of an inch of ice accumulation can cause a significant difference in the airflow over a wing.
But the FAA hasn't ordered the change, even though Canada did 10 years ago.
Anybody who flies in Canada has those de-icing boots on those aircrafts deployed the moment it approaches bad weather. We still don't have it here today.
Now, the FAA says it has issued about 100 ice-worthiness directives over the course of the past 10 years or so, and it's studying whether to require those boots to be turned on even sooner. Lastly, Lester, last note, that we now know that this plane was an autopilot on final approach. That's a very normal procedure. Coming in on autopilot, it's then up to the pilot to deploy the flaps and prepare to land. Back to you.
Tom Costello tonight, thank you. And as investigators learn more about what happened, we are learning more about the 50 people who died in the crash, and by extension, the hundreds more whose lives they touched. NBC's Peter Alexander joins us tonight from Clarence Center, New York, with the human impact of this disaster. Peter, good evening.
Lester, good evening to you. Residents here in the Buffalo area have long considered this the city of good neighbors. But tonight it is increasingly clear that the grief extends far beyond this community's borders.
In Buffalo, the heart of hockey country, hearts tonight are broken. What was planned as a college reunion for friends instead became a tearful memorial. Missing from the ice, Maddie Loftus of New Jersey. The 24-year-old was on her way to visit her former Buffalo State teammates when Flight 3407 fell from the sky. Her number 10 was hanging above the bench. The list of victims is as varied as they were remarkable. 64-year-old saxophonist Jerry Niewood and jazz guitarist Coleman Mellett, just 34, were both heading to Buffalo for a big gig with famed musician Chuck Mangione, Mellett's mentor in California.
He was so full of joy and so full of love, and it would always come through the music. It would come through his instrument. would just flow out.
30-year-old Lauren Maurer was flying in to meet her boyfriend at his brother's wedding. It would be her first trip to Buffalo. Her boyfriend, who didn't lose a single soldier as an Army captain in Iraq, is now mourning her loss. Ronald Gonzalez directed a youth program in New Jersey. The 44-year-old once led the outreach effort focused on AIDS in Buffalo's Latino community. In Florida, friends and relatives of the plane's pilot, Captain Marvin Renslow, are still stunned.
Marvin loved to fly. He was doing what he loved to do. He was living his dream.
Clarence Center, a town of 28,000, is trying to absorb the shock.
Well, I think the number one thing is you talk with people and you communicate, and this community is close already, so it just brings you even closer.
Jamie Lynn Trujillo is heading home, just 4 doors away from the crash site, still haunted by that night.
It was a very traumatic experience, and today it's actually hitting me more than like, I think I've been walking around very just numb.
As the mourning begins, the stories of sorrow continue to emerge.
And late this evening, authorities confirmed they have recovered 15 of the 50 victims' bodies from the crash site. The medical examiner, Lester, said it could be 3 to 4 more days before that entire process is complete.
All right, Peter Alexander. Peter, thank you. In this era of advanced jet travel, more airlines are turning to smaller commuter planes, including propeller-driven aircraft like the one that went down near Buffalo. But they are not as popular among passengers, who often feel safer on bigger jets. But is there really a difference? We've asked NBC's Jeff Rawson, a pilot himself, to take a look. Jeff, are the smaller planes as safe as the bigger jets?
In a word, Lester, yes, they're very safe, and the industry continues to stand behind them. These turboprops are built to fly in bad weather. Look at the model involved in this crash. It's the Dash 8 Q400. Its first deadly crash in the U.S., only the second worldwide. Safety standards are just as high for these commercial propeller planes as they are for those jumbo jets where people feel a little safer. They're cheaper to operate. Airlines would rather fly, for example, a packed turboprop with 50 passengers than, say, a 767 that's only half full. Think of the fuel price alone. And so look for more regional service. That is the trend here. Of all the commercial airports nationwide, 75% now rely solely on small regional aircraft. Take Newark Liberty, for example, one of the busiest international airports in the country. 45% of all arrivals and departures are now regional turboprops and regional jets. And if you say this doesn't affect me, it may soon. The latest numbers show 162 million people are flying on regional aircraft. That's a spike of 44% since 2003, and the number is rising. Many regional jets are now on back order for many of these airlines, and it is clear now this is where commercial aviation is going, Lester. More flights on smaller planes.
Important information. Jeff Rawson, thanks very much.